Welcome, everyone. I'll start over. Welcome, everyone, to this presentation of the IT Professionals Conference 2024. This is Enhancing Cloud Security from Basics to Advanced Strategies. Your presenters today are Hala, Kelly, Pam, who will not be with us but will be in spirit, and Tomomi. So without further ado, I will pass it along to Hala.
Morning, everyone, or afternoon now. Thank you for joining. Like stated, Pam Snyder helped us develop today's presentation, but unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us. So if you want to go to the next slide, we can talk about our agenda for today. So we're going to start off with a brief speaker introduction, and then we're going to go into the foundational concepts of cloud security. And then we're going to talk about a security baseline, common threats and best practices for mitigation, automation, security hub and guard duty, and then the risk assessment process. At the end, we'll have time for Q&A. So we ask that you just keep your questions until the end. You can definitely submit them in the chat, but we won't be checking or answering until the end. And so my name is Hala Hussein. I'm a cloud engineer on the Do It Public Cloud team at UW Madison. Kelly, you're muted.
Thank you. It would not let me unmute myself. I'm Kelly Rivera. I'm the lead cloud engineer for the Do It Public Cloud team.
Hello, my name is Tomomi Imamura. I'm the enterprise cybersecurity architect working in the CTO's office.
Alrighty, so to start off, we have the foundational concepts of cloud security. Just a disclaimer, in efforts to meet all of our campus needs, we have established public cloud instances in each of the public cloud platforms, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. A lot of our examples today will be given through Amazon Web Services, but we do support and have established instances in all three. So starting off, I'd like to share 3 concepts to help you get started in the public cloud. The first is understanding the concept of a shared responsibility model. All 3 public clouds offer or have a shared responsibility model, and I believe that AWS has the best way of explaining it. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, and then you are responsible for the security within the cloud. This basically means that AWS is going to be responsible for the physical access and hardware in their data centers, along with their global network connectivity. And then us as users are responsible for securing the virtual resources that we will be using, the data that we are flowing throughout these resources and network connections. We're also responsible for ensuring encryption is used when needed and maintaining the operating system. The second is data protection. We need to protect the data by defining what interactions are necessary with it. In some cases, a public cloud architect won't need access to any of the data that they are supporting. Therefore, your team should be creating a provisioning process that results in appropriately sized access to your workload. This is really important to limit the access that is associated with the services to reduce the potential risk to the services. We recommend studying up on the identity access management or IAM features available in the public cloud you are using and provisioning based on least privilege. The best example of real life example I could give of this is say your kids take the bus to school and they need to get into the house at the end of the day. If you have a garage code on your garage to open it up, they can still get into the house and do what they need to do after school, versus everyone having their own keys to the house and potentially losing one and putting your house kind of at risk for anyone to get in. The third point goes back to the first. Start with security. Once you have your account provided by the public cloud team and you are architecting your services, always check in with the security tools such as Security Hub or Defender to review the current findings. If you do not have Security Hub available in your AWS account, then you can always inquire with the public cloud team about being migrated to an organization that has these tools already enabled for you. These tools go beyond the traditional endpoint security alerting of viruses or Trojan infections and can report on misconfigurations of your services as well. Of course, the public cloud team has implemented these tools for you in addition to the traditional virus or infection alerting in the tools like AWS's Guard Duty. And then finally is always review the docs. It can be hard to find the time. However, the public cloud documentation is necessary to review prior to implementing a service. As a public cloud architect or engineer, you are wearing the networking, endpoint, sysadmin, and security hats, among others. It can be hard to specialize in all of these areas on top of, what else we do in the day. So letting the docs support the secure deployment of your resources. We can go to the next slide. And so what is a security baseline? A security baseline is the set of security controls, configurations, and best practices to establish a minimum level of security for your organization's IT and system infrastructure. And this goes beyond what's established in your console. This can be this can also include remediation plans and SLAs within the team when responding to potential threats to your infrastructure. And then why is this important? If you want to go to the next slide. This is important because the security baseline sets the standard for your security configurations and policies, and this controls all of the system and resources in the cloud environment and make sure that they adhere to them. This consistency ensures that security measures are applied uniformly across all assets, which can reduce the risk of security breaches, data loss, and other security incidences. The baseline also helps to establish that minimum level of security and make sure that we have a, kind of like a checklist to make sure that we're adhering to it. This is also important to help with compliance requirements because many industries and organizations have specific compliant requirements regarding data and security. A security baseline helps organizations ensure that they're meeting these compliance standards by providing that guideline for helping implement necessary security controls and measures. For example, when we're developing our benchmark on the public cloud team, we incorporated NIST, like the National Institute of Security and Technology, and the Center of Internet Security Standards, the CIS, within our baseline. Another reason why a baseline is important, it helps with the efficiency and scalability of your infrastructure. By having that predefined environment structure, you can streamline the account creation process, which makes it more efficient. Instead of always starting from scratch and trying to decide how to configure each resource or service, you have that already predefined standard to start with, which ends up saving you time and an effort in configuring and securing your cloud environment. This is also helpful as cloud environments grow and evolve because maintaining consistent security can become increasingly difficult as the organization grows. So if you are, as you're starting off, you're just kind of ignore the security thing, you just want to jump into the console and get started and start setting things up, you can miss things along the way. And then, 6 months, 2 years down the road, something is compromised or you realize that you aren't being as secure as you possibly could, you got to go back and remediate, which takes time out of your team versus taking that small bit of time starting off to review and create that baseline. It'll help you going forward. And then with auditing and monitoring, because we've created a reference point for audit for what our standard is, organizations can track the deviations from that baseline and identify potential security gaps or violations and take those corrective actions promptly. In my opinion, this is probably one of the most valuable benefits to having a security baseline because this will keep your infrastructure secure throughout its lifetime. Being able to see what's happening in your cloud environment is really crucial as a really crucial part of its success. It also ensures that your team stays aware of what is going on within them and gives you the chance to act on anything that may be happening quickly. Setting that standard for what your team is looking for and should be aware of is important as well, because there are a lot of options within each cloud provider for what can be alerted on or scanned. And if you have not reduced it to what is important to your team, it can be really time consuming and can take away from your other tasks, or it can even cause alert fatigue. If you're constantly getting emails from guard duty or what have you, you can kind of get you can get like a kind of numb to seeing those alerts. And then, out of the 100 emails that you get from that service, there might be one that's actually a critical alert and you might have missed it because, you're getting 100 of them a day. So making sure that you customize that and come up with a plan that's important to your team is important. I want to go to the next slide. And then what does this look like on campus? So in the Do It Public Cloud team, we have leveraged AWS Control Tower, Azure Policy, and GCP Security Command Center to ensure the consistency on all of our accounts, subscriptions, and projects, to make sure that our standards are set at the organization level, and we can guarantee that it's being applied to each account we provision within them. It also gives us that bird's eye view of what's happening and what's being implemented in each account, so we can, and gives us that ability to reapply anything that may have changed by the customer that goes against our standard. Within those security services that we have within AWS, Microsoft Defender, and GCP Command Center, we have a centralized security management, which again helps us gain insights into our security posture and swiftly address any vulnerabilities. We also have vulnerability scanning through those services, and that conduct regular scans to identify and mitigate potential security risks, and again continues to strengthen our defenses against threats. We also have an automated alert system enabled, integrated within AWS Guard Duty, Microsoft Defender, and GCP Security Command Center, and those alerts are sent via email to our account owners, the public cloud team, and our cybersecurity operations center, if they're at a critical risk for any security incidents, enabling swift response and resolution. We've also automated our cloud account creation process through Terraform, which is an infrastructure as code language. And we automate that, again, to keep that standardization within our accounts and ensure that we are enforcing all of our necessary security policies consistently across our environments. And Terraform also alerts us to any deviations from the original configuration and allows us to revert any changes back to that original configuration. An additional thing that we have on campus is our risk assessment meetings with cybersecurity. When deploying a new account, customers will go through a risk assessment process with a member from the Office of Cybersecurity, where they'll go over their environment plan, and then this helps to identify and mitigate any security risks before they start deploying anything within their account. And then they'll also be made aware of all of the security policies put in place by the public cloud team and taught how to use the services enabled within their environments. Those risk assessment meetings are also helpful because we don't want to control what you do in the cloud on the public cloud team. We just want to make sure that you're being as safe as possible. So if there's any unique situations that come up that deviate from the standard, we can help make sure that it's being done in the safest way possible, and we can adjust our tools accordingly.
All right, so we have a question to the audience. Approximately how many services does AWS offer? So services, for example, would be like S3 for storage, EC2 for compute, or like a CloudFront for content delivery network. So those kind of things. So how many? Number one is 1 through 50 services. Number 2, 51 through 150 services. Number 3, 151 to 300 services. I think the poll question should show up on your screen.
Yep,
And,
you can go ahead and vote for the one that you think.
yeah, thanks, Laurel.
Mm-hmm. Give it a few more seconds for people to vote.
Yep.
This is a tough one. All right, I think most folks have voted, so I'll go ahead and close it.
Great. Yes, so correct answer is number 3. So AWS doesn't even say exactly how many. They said over 200 AWS services available. Some other sources say offers approximately 250 services. So basically there are a lot of services. I wanted to talk about some common threats in the cloud environment. Here are a few examples. By the way, all of us enjoyed so much playing with Copilot to create AI images like this. So yeah, definitely we got our prompt engineering skill, updated. So that was fun. Anyway, so the first one is the misconfigured S3 buckets. People, we accidentally make, these buckets publicly accessible. We forget it's out there. So if you have to share data outside our account or organization, you might want to think something like S3 signed URL, for example, to control access a little bit more. And the second one is identity and access management, or IAM permissions. So we tend to overprivilege cloud identities, and misconfigured IAM policies could lead to unauthorized access. Next one is the credential exposure. Credentials are something like passwords, access keys, API keys, things like that. People, we accidentally store them in publicly accessible locations, and then, accidentally expose these secrets. And the next one is insecure network configuration. So example would be something like a use of unencrypted protocols. And we can use, WAF, web application firewalls, for example, something like that in front of, CloudFront, for example, for attack mitigations. And there's a common theme here. So this comes down to misconfiguration. So as we discussed earlier, there are too many services that you need to know how to set up correctly for those 250 services. And misconfiguration causes, vulnerabilities. So misconfiguration itself is the vulnerability. It's always a good idea to have a plan for worst case scenarios. This is actually provide a great way to secure things if you prepare for worst case scenarios. If you have compromised instance, for example, in production, you might want to think, weigh in if you want to take down the site or not. And you should have a runbook or playbook for your decision-making process so that you don't have to decide and figure out on the spot. In cloud environment, no taking a server offline, no such thing exists in cloud environment. So you can't really just remove your internet gateway to disconnect from the internet. So you need to understand how network communication truly works. And then you can receive alerts, as Hela mentioned earlier. So you could use the cloud native security tools. Examples of cloud native security tools would be something like CloudTrail, GuardDuty, AWS Config, those things, and equivalent tools for Google and Azure. This is an example runbook for instance isolation when one of your instances got compromised. since AWS would not allow you to simply remove the internet gateway, you may need to work from the instance level. So detaching the instance from the auto scaling. So, it might be keep provisioning your compromised instance. So you need to remove those. And then security groups, so you need to look into that and disallow inbound and outbound traffic from that. And you need to look into IAM role and remove instances if you're using these IAM roles. And you might want to take a snapshot for later analysis. And maybe you might want to create an AMI for instances for later use. So I'm passing this on to Kelly now.
Thank you, Tomomi. So in the ever-evolving world of cloud computing, the dynamic and rapidly changing nature of cloud environments makes secure configuration a moving target. And as Tomomi stated, that misconfiguration is a big security vulnerability. Manual configuration methods are not only susceptible to human error, but also incredibly time-consuming, which is a luxury we can't afford in the fast-paced digital arena. The stakes are high. Any security misconfiguration, no matter how minor, can serve as a gateway for cyber threats. This is why automation is crucial. It brings a level of precision and consistency and efficiency that manual processes simply cannot. By automating the configuration process and remediation, we can ensure that the security measures are not only deployed swiftly, but also maintained accurately over time, keeping our cloud infrastructure resilient against the threats of tomorrow. Two of the key strategies we will talk about are secure configuration using infrastructure as code and configuration management tools, as well as auto remediation of misconfigured systems. Infrastructure as code is a method of managing and provisioning computing infrastructure through machine-readable definition files, rather than through manual hardware configuration or clicking buttons. It's a key practice within DevOps that allows for the automation of infrastructure deployment and management, ensuring consistency and speed in setting up environments for development, testing, and production. Infrastructure as code means no more debugging systems by logging onto several VMs at once and comparing values and guessing what's going on. Being able to read code to determine the state is liberating. Knowing that all of your environments are identical is comforting. Using diff to compare two different configurations is such a powerful tool. And since we check the configuration code into Git, we can compare current state with a previous commit, easily answering the question, what changed recently? Software that executes system commands. The code that configures systems, environments, or resources is not procedural or object-oriented. It maintains state. There are tools for all your provisioning needs. Puppet, Chef, Ansible are great for configuring Linux or Windows VMs. Each cloud provider offers native tools to configure cloud environments. Terraform and OpenTofu are two popular tools that work to provision infrastructure in many of the cloud provider environments. These are just some of the tools that help automate the deployment, configuration, and management of servers and other infrastructure, which can significantly reduce the potential for human error and increase efficiency in operations. Auto remediation refers to the automated process of detecting and resolving security issues without the need for manual intervention. This approach becomes increasingly important as it helps maintain a strong security posture while reducing the workload on IT staff. Here's how it works and why it's beneficial. Automated detection. Security tools continuously monitor the cloud environment for vulnerabilities or deviations from security policies. When an issue is detected, the system automatically flags it for remediation. Immediate response. Instead of waiting for human intervention, auto remediation can immediately respond to identified issues. For example, if a misconfiguration is detected, The system can automatically adjust settings to align with the correct configuration. Compliance assurance. By automatically enforcing security policies, helps to ensure the cloud environment remains compliant with regulatory standards and internal policies. AWS Security Hub is a service that acts as a command center for your AWS security and compliance. It aggregates, organizes, and prioritizes security alerts or findings from various AWS services, such as Amazon GuardDuty, Amazon Inspector, and Amazon Macie, as well as from AWS partner solutions. The key here is integration and simplification. Security Hub continuously scans your AWS environment using automated compliance checks on standards like CIS, AWS Foundational Benchmarks, and PCI. This means you're not just informed about potential security threats, but also about your compliance status against these standards. Imagine having a detailed security score for your entire AWS environment, which helps you understand your security posture at a glance. That's what Security Hub provides. It's about making security management more proactive rather than reactive. GuardDuty is your vigilant security guard, tirelessly monitoring for suspicious activity and unauthorized behavior across your AWS infrastructure. It utilizes machine learning, anomaly detection, and integrated threat intelligence feeds to identify and prioritize potential threats. GuardDuty is incredibly easy to set up and starts analyzing billions of events across your AWS account immediately. No need for additional software or hardware. It is also fully managed, meaning updates and maintenance are handled by AWS, ensuring you are always up to date with the latest threat detection. The beauty of GuardDuty lies in its integration with AWS Security Hub, which allows for seamless security operation experience. When GuardDuty detects a threat, it sends a detailed finding to Security Hub, where you can view and manage all of your security alerts in one place. This integration empowers you to swiftly respond to potential security incidents. If you're using an account provisioned by the UW Public Cloud team, these tools have been provisioned for you already. GCP and Azure have equivalent services as well. Here we can see the dashboard of Security Hub, and we can see the score of 62% compliance for this account. Next, we can click into the Findings tab. And here we have a list of all of the issues with this account. You can sort by severity or by the status. If you want to see more details about the individual finding, you can click on the title. And it will open a side pane where you can see more details about the alert. And it even has a section called remediation where you can click on to go to documentation of how to remediate the issue. When we click on the button, it takes us to documentation like this with easy laid out step-by-step instructions on how to remediate the security issue, making security compliance and remediation easy and simple. Risk assessments are required for all public cloud projects that are using sensitive and restricted data. In many cases, designating your data as public can be just as difficult as designating it as sensitive or restricted. You can seek help with your data classification through your data steward. There'll be a link included at the end of this deck. Reviewing UW Policy 504, working with risk management and compliance, aka RMC. Risk assessments can be requested through RMC's website. You can find the RMC website by searching the main UW Madison site and following a link to the intake form to request an assessment as seen in the picture on this slide. There are UW risk analysts that focus on public cloud, PCI, and HIPAA. Your risk assessment may require more than one analyst to assess the project. Risk assessments document the current security posture of your public cloud workload. The complexity of the risk assessment is related to the complexity of the public cloud workload. Complex projects with restricted data may take longer to access than a single storage solution. But one thing that stays consistent in the risk assessment process is that it's collaborative. RMC will work with the project's architecture leads to learn more about the project and use an assessment template to discover what processes, documentation, or configurations might help reduce the risk of the project to the university. Finally, as a general best practice, data flow and services used should be documented in an architectural diagram. Not only is this best practice and can help uncover dependencies, support software or virtual hardware inventories, it will ensure that those who interact with the project are all on the same page. And lastly, it makes the process much easier for the RMC analysts and cloud engineers who are working on the risk assessment.
All right, so as mentioned, here are some of our helpful links. We have a link to the public cloud risk assessment that Kelly just mentioned. We also have the public cloud KB for risk assessments that just kind of goes over what that process looks like and what you might need to prepare. And we also have a link to the architectural diagram tools. It's always really helpful for all of our, for the person doing your risk assessment and the cloud team to see what your infrastructure is going to look like mapped out. We're kind of like visual people, so it's helpful for us. If you're unsure what your data classification is, we have a link to that. It'll map out all of those. And then public cloud team events that anyone can join. The one I want to call out the most is we do have a public cloud team office hours that is free for anyone to join. Not only can you just come in and listen, you can also ask us any questions on the public cloud team, or even collaborate with some other people on campus who might have been using the same services that you are and what their struggles might have been and how they overcame it. So it's a good place for collaboration. And then we also have a link to the cloud community teams channel, which is another really good place for collaboration on campus when talking about the cloud. And the cloud team's open office hours are every Thursday at 2 p.m. Thanks, Steve. So now we just want to open up to any questions.
Q&A.
Go ahead and ask any questions. You should be able to now unmute yourselves in just a minute. There we go. So feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand and then we'll acknowledge you. Laurel is asking, what kind of things do people talk about during cloud office hours? What are some of the topics people maybe have come to you guys with before?
It's really anything in there. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It's just kind of anything and everything. So from anything between like starting as like, I've never used this service before. How do I get started? Or I'm getting this error when trying to do this thing. Do you have any ideas? I don't know if Kelly wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I was going to say anything and everything at the same time as you. But
Yeah.
also, things like billing questions. I have this weird charge on my bill. Why is it happening? And then, like Hala said, errors. How can I make this better? Is this the right approach to take? Sometimes it's even, look at this cool feature I found. People will come in and just share that kind of thing.
Very cool. We also have another question here. What tools and standards do you use for your risk assessments? So
that question would have been great for Pam. I'll do my best to answer it. The tools that they use, it's going to be OneTrust for the risk assessments. That's where all of the risk assessment information is stored. As far as the standards, it depends on the standard that your workload needs to follow. So I believe that part of the intake questions is, are there any standards you need to be following, like HIPAA, or are you dealing with FERPA data, things like that. So it really depends on each individual workload, because we deal with so many different workloads across campus and so many different standards that you have to follow.
Thank you. And then another question. Are there certifications and training opportunities that you found that are really helpful?
Tomomi, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I use the A Cloud Guru. So it's got the very like short chunk of learning. So like 15 minutes, very short video you can watch whenever you have chance, and so that way you can build your knowledge. And there's a specific series that focusing on specific certifications. So yeah, those are very helpful, and it provides a hands-on environment. So if you wanna just use that, that should work. And also do it cloud team. I think if you get approval from your management, I think you can get a account for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Couple of comments in chat. Check those out. Looks like VMware Certified Professional 6 was brought up at one point.
Oh, and as Mike mentioned, our security tools also check compliance with multiple standards, which is visible to our account holders through like the services like Kelly showed in the screenshots.
I saw a question earlier about our AI generated pictures.
Oh yeah, they were asking if your pictures were AI generated. You kind of caught that in the middle of the presentation, but yeah, they had that certain AI glow to them, didn't they?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, we did.
Great. Any other questions that we have for the group here? Feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'll ask you one question, just, since it's Friday afternoon. Which platform would you say is like your favorite to work on? Cloud platform.
I'm not sure if we're allowed to pick favorites, but not as a team at least. But personally, I've worked in AWS the longest, so it's what I'm most comfortable in, and I think that's across campus what seems to be the most widely used. So I don't know if anyone else wants to comment.
Yeah,
Maybe
my
we'll get
favorite.
saved by this question here. Somebody asked, well, how many people come to your office hours? But go ahead and finish your response to.
Yeah, so my favorite platform is AWS, and I think that was the earliest one that I got hands-on, and started as a free tier, and so that was very helpful for me to just use my credit card, but I didn't have to worry about too much about payment, so it was only like $1 or $2 per month, so that was a nice way to get started. So yeah, AWS.
All right. And yeah, again, the question was how many people are usually coming to office hours? Looks like Mike answered in chat about anywhere from 1 to 2 to 8 to 10 or so.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. And it really depends, but we also have breakout rooms. So if we have quite a few people, we can break out into separate Zoom rooms so that we can answer more questions if needed. And some people just come to hang out and listen. So it's a good time to just talk about anything cloud, even if, and hear what other people are working on. And sometimes you might pick up things from other people.
And then a question here on Terraform. Can you provide any additional information or insight on Terraform? I've heard of it, but I'd like to know a little bit more.
It's an infrastructure as code language. It's put out by HashiCorp. That's a big question to answer. I've done presentations on Terraform, so fitting into small thing is hard. There's a lot of resources out there. Even A Cloud Guru, I think, has resources, but it's basically you write out in code, okay, I need an EC2 instance and it should be this type, or it should be, you know, a T3 small, and it should have this big of a hard drive, things like that. And you write it out. You can write out your S3 bucket definitions and security settings and things like that. And then you can deploy it, and you can use the same code then to spin up your infrastructure in dev versus prod. And then it's nice because then the configuration is the same between all of those environments. And when you make a change, it flows very much like you would make a code change to your application code. You make the change, you roll it out, you test it in dev, and then you go out and you roll it out and test it in prod. And it can go through the same type of merge request approval process and things like that. Let's see.
Looks like somebody put a link to
Oops.
Terraform 2 in
Thanks, Steve.
chat.
Yeah.
And it says Jan has a question about what are some of the more complicated workflows moving restricted data from on-premise into the cloud that you've seen?
I mean, a lot of times if it's a one-time move and it's just pure data, it's not infrastructure, we a lot of times will use things like Globus to move it from on-prem to the cloud. I don't know that we've had anything too complicated. I think a lot of it is just making sure that you're following the frameworks of a typical migration of, you know, testing, doing a trial move, and then testing it, and then doing the actual move and cut over.
All right, and then I think probably our final question here, given time, what is the relationship between Docker and various cloud forms like AWS?
You can use Docker on the VMs on any of the cloud platforms. I'm not sure what they also have a lot of them have their own container service options, container repository options. Is there anything specific?
I would say if
Yeah.
they have anything specific, they should probably go to office hours and ask you questions.
Yeah.
I'll plug that one first. I think we're about at time here to wrap it up. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Kelly, Hala, and Tomomi for sharing their expertise on cloud security. So if you have any further questions or anything else, just reach out to them at office hours or drop them a line, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you out. So thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.